And welcome back to another crossover episode. This is Locked On Chiefs, Locked On Buccaneers. We're going to be getting into this game and which team that has lost both of their starting wide receivers is going to win this game. Much more coming on Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom. Welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day. Don't forget, we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. And Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. It is crossover episode time, and we're going to be talking about Monday Night Football. Chiefs hosting the Bucs on Monday Night Football. Should be a good game. James Yarcho from Bucs is here. Okay, well, he doesn't think it's going to be a good game. Let's talk about it, James. How's it going?
Doing all right. How about you?
Doing well. Not much I could say about the team other than they continue to win ugly. We will be talking about that. Talk about, can the Bucs actually run the ball against the Chiefs? I think that could be a big thing in this game. What it takes for each team to get a victory, and the game is probably going to be won in the trenches. We'll be talking a little bit more about that a little bit later. But let's just go ahead and dive into it, and I'll kick it off. Storyline of the Chiefs. Obviously, they get DeAndre Hopkins. They win against the Raiders. But the storyline with Kansas City right now is that they continue to win ugly. They continue to play, football that is not what you would expect from this Chiefs team. It's not what you would expect for Patrick Mahomes. It's not what you would expect from an Andy Reid offense. But they continue to find ways to win. Patrick Mahomes has 9 interceptions in 7 games. That's well above any kind of pace he's ever had in his career so far. And before we started talking about this, James, I actually told you one of the craziest stats. I just tweeted out this stat a little bit earlier. According to PFF, and I know they're not perfect, they say that he has 7 turnover-worthy plays this season. He hasn't had a turnover-worthy play in the last 3 games, and he has 4 picks in the last 3 games. Make it make sense, because none of it does to me, but this Chiefs team continues to find a way to win, and they're winning with defense right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of been, at least from the outsider's perspective, that's kind of been the Chiefs' MO the last season and a half, right? I mean, it wasn't the explosive Chiefs offense that we've all come to know that led them to winning a Super Bowl. It was the defense being able to keep the opponents, scores down, keep the offense in games, and then Mahomes doing Mahomes things and making plays when it mattered the most, and Kelce making plays when it mattered the most. So, like I said, from the outside looking in, it looks like the offense isn't anything really to write home about. They just seem kind of average, kind of doing just enough, but it's that defense that everybody is concerned about. And it's kind of crazy. You think of the Chiefs over the last, 8 years, 7 years, 8 years, it's been the offense leading the charge. Yep. And the defense has been, average to below average. And on the other side of the field, you have the Buccaneers, which is a franchise that has always leaned on the defense. Now, all of a sudden, it's the offense carrying the load and the defense being one of the worst in the NFL. So it's funny how these two teams' identities kind of Freaky Friday'd themselves and switched places.
Yeah, and I said this when the show started. I mean, we're looking at 2 teams who have both lost their starting 2 wide receivers this season. Kansas City didn't even get a snap from Hollywood Brown in the regular season. They lost Rashee Rice week 4. You lose Godwin and Mike Evans, I believe, in the same game, if I remember correctly. And obviously Godwin's done for the year. Evans is done. He's on IR right now. But it's kind of a freaky thing. You look at the injuries around the NFL. There are so many wide receivers that have gone down with different teams. But that is one of the reasons Kansas City's offense has struggled, is they had so many big plans for Brown and Rice. And obviously you don't have those guys now. I just said they brought in DeAndre Hopkins. We'll see if he gets a little bit more involved. I expect him to get more involved this week. But it's a big deal for both teams to be dealing with those types of injuries, because it's going to affect them the rest of the season.
Oh, no doubt about it. And that's why I actually just talked on Locked On Bucs about the Bucs not being in a position to make a trade. And I brought up the Chiefs as an example. They went out and they made a move for DeAndre Hopkins because they're a contender. They're still a championship contender, and they can go and make that kind of move and bring in that kind of guy and continue to go all in. Whereas the Bucs, when you lose Mike Evans, he's at that moment the league leader in touchdowns. You lose Chris Godwin, he's, second in the NFL in touchdowns. He's leading the league in yards after catch when he goes down. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking to a third-round rookie in Jalen McMillan. You're looking to Cade Otton, the tight end. You're looking to Sterling Shepard and Rakim Jarrett and Trey Palmer and those kinds of guys. None of those are Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, and it affects everything. Just like with Kansas City, I love watching Xavier Worthy, but he's not Rashee Rice. He's not gonna be able to put up those kinds of numbers. Kind of like Kareem,
not this year.
I like Kareem Hunt. I love watching him play football. He's not Isaiah Pacheco. He's not going to do the same things, but the Chiefs still find a way to win each and every week. And I'm with you 100%. It's been the defense that has just been absolutely outstanding.
Well, and you look at it, and it's I was just looking over at your record. You're 4-4. You're in a division where you possibly could be in contention for winning the division if you can continue to find a way to win. But you're right. I mean, at 4-4, it's a little bit different than 7-0. At 7-0, you feel like, or 6-0 when they made the move for Hopkins, you feel like if you make a move, it's just going to make you better, and you have a chance to go out and win a Super Bowl and potentially three-peat. So it's a little different. I get that in that aspect. But you also look at it from the aspect of the Buccaneers. Can they run the table and get to the point where they feel like they can contend for a Super Bowl? Yeah, they can probably make the playoffs at 4-4, but can they make the Super Bowl? Because you don't make that type of move unless you think it's going to get you to the Super Bowl.
Right. And this week is going to be a tough matchup. Next week they get the 49ers. Then they have a bye week. And coming out of the bye, you get the Giants, the Raiders, the Panthers twice, the Saints, the Cowboys, the Chargers. That's a winnable stretch. So I don't think that they're in contention for the division anymore just because they're 0-2 against the Falcons. The Falcons are going to end up 6-0 in the division. The Bucs at best are going to be 4-2. And had Godwin not gone down, had Evans not gone down, and even if Evans did go down, knowing that he was going to come back with Godwin out for the year, this defense has too many holes on it to go all in on one guy and make that kind of move. So yeah, they could still make the playoffs. They could still surprise some people and end up in the divisional round. But this is a team that was from the jump built to be a championship contender in 2025 when they had a little bit more money and another draft under their belt to really fill some of the rest of the shortcomings of the team. And now that's pretty much what they're looking at. And in their hand was forced because of the injuries.
Well, yeah. Now you have to wonder if, they could maybe play for the, not the division, but they could maybe play for the playoffs. But you said it, they're really trying to build for 2025. So you don't want to be trading away pieces.
Right.
Or trading for pieces that are going to be giving away your draft picks for the future years. You want to maybe even consider at this point, if you don't think you have a chance in the division, does it make more sense to maybe trade away somebody on your roster and say, okay, especially if they have an expiring contract after this year, maybe what we look at is we start looking at the future in a little bit of a way to really set you up for 2025. There's going to be a lot of things going on in the NFL the rest of the season. I do think the NFC is kind of wide open to an extent, but I understand what you're saying about the Falcons. The rest of the division right now, I mean, Derek Carr going down in New Orleans really changed the dynamic there. And obviously Carolina is Carolina. So lots to talk about, though. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Bucs and can they get their run game going against the Chiefs? Our fans over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby. It is a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like you. The fans who were first in the parking lot and who are the last to leave. We see you. You know what else gave me a little bit of Chiefs fan fuel this week? The moment when DeAndre Hopkins caught his first pass from Patrick Mahomes. That showed what his value can be to this team. That was a big moment, and it shows how much of an impact he can have this season for this team. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stay in the Fan 5-Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with the 5-Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, James, let's get into this and talk about this Bucs team. What is the major storyline? Obviously, we've already kind of talked about the wide receivers, but what's the major storyline going into this game for them?
Well, not only is it the fact that a Todd Bowles-led defense is just hemorrhaging points and yardage. You take a look at Todd Bowles' typical defense. It's usually in the upper third, upper quarter across the board. This one's in the bottom 25% of basically every defensive metric. When you look at yards allowed, points allowed, rush defense, pass defense, everything, it has been awful. So it's been on the offense to compensate for that, and they did a great job. Then Mike Evans and Chris Godwin go down, and everything changes. So the biggest thing about an offense that, unlike the defense, is top five, in almost every metric, is can they run the football? And the biggest thing the past couple of weeks, once the offensive line all got healthy and all got back on the field together, the running game took off. Sean Tucker had an explosion against the New Orleans Saints. Bucky Irving has the highest missed tackle rate of any running back in the NFL. Rachaad White really starting to come on strong. And you go back 2 weeks to when they played the Baltimore Ravens, the best run defense in the NFL. They were allowing 59 rushing yards per game on average up to that point. The Bucs surpassed that in the beginning of the second quarter. Up against the Atlanta Falcons, the first 3 drives, and that opening drive was 2 plays because Rachaad White fumbled. Opening 3 drives, 70 rushing yards. They only finished with 102 because they stopped running the football. The biggest thing for this Bucs offense, especially against a team like the Chiefs, especially with as bad as their defense is, they have to run the ball and draw out the clock. Just eat that clock up. Keep a bad defense on the sideline. Keep Mahomes on the sideline. They had scoring drives of 15 and 12 plays that chewed up 8 and 7.5 minutes against the Atlanta Falcons. That's the recipe for winning this game. They have to run the ball, and they're going to be able to do it effectively when you have 3 different guys that can really do everything, but each one of them has a different specialty. They can keep moving guys in and out, keep the defense, kind of on their heels a little bit. You have the power with Sean Tucker. He starts to wear down those guys because he's tough to bring down. Then you have the quickness of Bucky, the elusiveness of Rachaad White. It really has been impressive to watch over the last couple of weeks. So they could run as well as they did against Baltimore, against Kansas City. They might give themselves a puncher's chance.
It's a big might, but you make a great point. I mean, they did it against Baltimore, and Baltimore has the best run defense in the NFL right now. Kansas City is number 2. They've allowed 17 yards more than Baltimore has. So I'm going to be really curious to see that matchup because you talk about this Chiefs defense and the strength of this Chiefs defense. It's been there. Obviously, they've been great against the pass to some extent as well, but their run defense has been phenomenal. I mean, and look at the running backs they've gone up against. They've gone up against Bijan Robinson. They went up against Derrick Henry first week. Bengals, okay. But they went up against the San Francisco 49ers, and they kept, their running back to very few yards. So we'll see how it ends up going. That's going to be a huge deal for both these teams. If Kansas City can stop them against the run, that's going to make it really interesting when the Buccaneers need to try to pass or want to pass, because right now, without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin, that changes how you're going to be able to attack this Chiefs defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cade Otton has really done a phenomenal job the last couple of weeks of sliding into that third down Chris Godwin role. And I realized that 2 weeks ago, Godwin was still on the field, but when Mike Evans went down, Cade Otton finished as the team's leading receiver against Baltimore, first career 100-yard game. Then last week against Atlanta, he finishes as the team's leading receiver again. He was the third down guy. All of those conversions, that were going to Chris Godwin are now going to Cade Otton. And I know we could end up with an Otton versus Kelce kind of matchup because both of these teams are terrible against the tight end. So we could see 2 tight ends kind of bring back, I guess it could be like National Tight Ends Monday Part 2, like kind of deal.
Right.
But
a week late.
He's the guy that the offense kind of has to funnel through now. Rakim Jarrett, that was his first game last week, coming off of injury. It's been his first action in a little while. 3 catches on 3 receptions. He looked good. I expect him to get more involved this week, kind of like you expect Hopkins to get a little bit more involved for the Chiefs. I expect Jarrett to be a bigger focus of the offense. Sterling Shepard, he's kind of been up and down, but he's made some good plays. And then Jalen McMillan, he's had a couple of nice plays, but still also plays like a rookie. And that's why it's so important that they be able to run the ball. And even if they're not running the ball, that whole run through the air kind of approach where it's just quick little dump offs to Rashad, quick little dump offs to Bucky, get those guys in space, let them use their athletic ability to make guys miss. Bucky more so than Rashad. Bucky Irving, for Chiefs fans that have not watched a Bucs game this year, you're going to see him get swarmed for what looks like a 2-yard loss, and it's going to end up a 3-yard gain. He is so slippery when he's running. Those are the guys that this offense has to lean on and just eat that clock. So it's going to be the running backs and Cade Otton as the primary source of offense against this Chiefs defense. The other big thing is, will Baker have enough time? I know this Chiefs pass rush is really, really impressive. Baker's good at escaping pressure, but is he going to have enough time to find his receivers and make smarter decisions, not putting the ball in danger?
Well, and you make a great point. This Chiefs team is getting pressure on quarterbacks. It's not necessarily getting them down, but it is getting pressure to some extent. I'm going to be curious because they just traded for another pass rusher. I would imagine he'll get some snaps against the Buccaneers, so we'll see how that goes with Josh Uche from who they got from New England. But you talk about Cade Otton and you talk about the running backs in the passing game, and that's actually something that I think a lot of Chiefs fans will get nervous about, and they should, because the reality is like you said earlier, this defense the Chiefs defense doesn't defend the tight end very well. That has been a problem throughout this season. Go back to game 1, Isaiah Likely was a guy that went off against this defense. And Brock Bowers had a couple of good catches early on and then kind of started to come back into it in the fourth quarter. They have struggled against the tight ends at times, but they've also struggled against running backs at times this season. So that type of passing game can give this team trouble, and that could be a big deal going into this one. I'm really going to be curious to see how they're able to get the tight end involved, how they're able to get the running backs involved in the passing game. And like you said, I mean, if they can get the ball going, running the ball against Kansas City, they're going to be in a great position. I'm a little bit more optimistic that Kansas City's defense has started to figure out how they're playing the run, and it's all about fit, it's all about scheme, and it's all about people doing their assignments. And if they do that, I think they're going to be in good position for this game.
Yeah, and one of the other big things, and I know we're gonna talk about the trenches coming up, but when you have Chris Jones that gets to go up against a rookie center, and Graham Barton's been great. He's been great. Don't get me wrong. And I said coming into the season, like, you can't ask for a better situation for a rookie center who has to go up against Vita Vea every single day in practice. That's going to prepare you for the best that the NFL can throw at you. But Chris Jones,
still a different animal.
That's going to be a test, especially if they want to get this run game going and be able to control the clock.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that right after we get back from this. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, here's some real talk. We've all been there, feeling like we're burning cash with those rent checks. It's frustrating, right? But here's the deal. Built Rewards has figured out a way to make rent more rewarding. Say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to a renter's revolution with Built. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnfl. joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Join built.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points with your rent payments today. This is where it gets fun. Talking about the trenches, you kind of touched on it last segment with Chris Jones. And I will say that is going to be a fun matchup. Chris Jones against a rookie is always fun for Chiefs fans to watch. I will say that. And you make a great point about Vita Vea being a great person for him to go against. But Chris Jones is a different animal. Vita Vea has a lot of, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Vita Vea. He's a great player. But Chris Jones has, the strength and the speed. He's not necessarily near as strong as Vita Vea, but his speed and his quickness and his ability to hit you and get you out of the way really quick has been a problem for defenses.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be a challenge. You have, a second-year right guard. You have a rookie center. You have one of, if not the best left tackle in the game in Tristan Wirfs. You're not worried about that side too much. Yep. He's going to handle his business.
Jealous of you on that.
Yeah, you have Luke Gedeke, who has skyrocketed once he switched from guard back to tackle, and he's over on the right side. It's the interior that you have to worry about. So that's why Chris Jones is such a huge concern. That's why Nadi is such a huge concern is their ability to collapse that interior, and they're going to wreck running lanes, which is going to hurt, what I've been saying this entire episode, that the Bucs have to run the ball. If you can't run up the middle, you can't bounce everything outside. It's not going to work. So it's going to be paramount for this Bucs offensive line to be able to contain Jones and clear some running lanes. On the flip side, I do have to say, I know a lot of people hate the Chiefs. They get a lot of, and that's what happens when you win. When you win championships, when you win games, you get a lot of hate. That's not why I hate the Chiefs. I hate the Chiefs because you guys got rid of Donovan Smith. How is Yaya Diaby and Kalijah Kancey supposed to destroy Patrick Mahomes' day when you guys don't have Donovan Smith on the field anymore? It upsets me. We had to cover Donovan Smith for 5 years, and you guys only had him for a season. And quite frankly, I'm offended.
I don't think that they're going to have a problem because Wanya Morris has been basically a turnstile at left tackle. So I don't think that's going to be a problem for them. And that's why I was saying I'm jealous of Tristan Wirfs because Kansas City doesn't have left tackle right now, at least the way that it's been going. Wanya Morris gave up a ton of pressure and several holding penalties last week against Max Crosby. And I know Crosby is one of the best DNs in football, so I get it to an extent, but you got to play better. And Kingsley Suamataia, I thought, played well enough to continue playing. I know he was struggling. I know he was having some rough times, but to me, you have to let a rookie try to play through it, and that's the only way he's going to get better. So maybe they're going to make a switch at some point. I don't think it's going to be this week. I'm not sure if they're going to make a switch back at this point, but I think that they're going to need to. But you look at the Chiefs' offensive line, and you really don't worry about the interior of the offensive line. That's definitely not the Chiefs' issues. Although they're going to be going up against Vita Vea, and that is going to be a fun matchup to watch because him against Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Joe Thuney is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Trey Smith and Vita Vea going up against each other will be fun by itself because both of those guys like to get after it. And you don't really worry about Jawan Taylor, but it's that left side of the line for the Chiefs that is the big concern. So you have to wonder how that's going to play out in this game and how that's going to change things. But when you look at the defensive line for the Chiefs, you talk about Chris Jones, you talked about Derek Nottie, but it's the other two guys too. I mean, it's Mike Pennell who's come in and, I know he only has 2 sacks on the year and that's not great, but he's fantastic against the run. He's been making run stuffs on a regular basis. You have Tershawn Wharton, who's come in and played very well as well. He's getting pressure on the quarterback, and he's helping, get pressure that way, but he's also helping in the running game. Their defensive line has played very well. George Karlaftis is setting the edge well. They have a lot of different things going for them in this game when it comes to both the offensive side and the defensive side of the ball. And when you look at why the Chiefs continue to win each and every week, it's probably because their offensive line and their defensive line are really close to the top in the NFL on both sides of the ball. Offensively, obviously you have a problem at left tackle, but defensively, I think that entire defensive line is fantastic, and that's what's gotten them there. But let's change up a little bit, and let's talk about ways that they can win. So you tell me, how can your Bucs win this game?
Well, run the ball effectively for sure, right out of the gate. Yeah, I've talked about it. I'm not going to harp on it too much longer. You control the clock, you keep your bad defense on the sideline, you have a chance. The next one is defend Kelce. We kind of touched on it a little bit. KJ Britt has been a massive liability in pass coverage. The middle of the field has been wide open. And when Kyle Pitts scores 2 touchdowns against you, there's a problem when you have to turn around and face Travis Kelce. Okay. So that is going to be an issue. You cannot let Mahomes and Kelce do what they did so well for so long. And really that this could be the game that sparks Kelce to return to form. Because I know he hasn't been putting up the same numbers that he always has. He had a good week last week, but generally his numbers have been a little bit lower. This could be a huge game for him. You have to shut that down immediately. You have Antoine Winfield Jr., you have Jordan Whitehead on the back end that can help out a little bit, but you cannot leave KJ Britt on an island against Travis Kelce. That is fun for no one. And then finally, make better decisions. And this is more for Baker Mayfield. 7 interceptions over the last 3 games. You had 2 against the Falcons that were terrible, terrible decisions that killed scoring drives. And when you lose by 5 points, those are things that stand out. He had 2 bad interceptions against the Ravens that, again, were in scoring range. One of them was in the end zone. You can't have that, especially against the Chiefs. You cannot give them extra possessions. You cannot give away your own possessions. You have to make better decisions. Take what they're giving you or throw the ball away to live and play another down. Yeah, those are the big 3 for the Bucs this week.
I laugh because you talk about Kyle Pitts, and I laugh because Kyle Pitts, I've had him on my fantasy team, I think 2 of the 3 years that he's been in the NFL, and he does almost nothing almost every single week. And he is an insane talent, and they have been misusing him his entire career, and I just don't understand it. But I get why you said it, and I get the frame of reference. For me, it's simple. Stop the run. If you stop the run against this Bucs team and you try to make them beat you through the air, I think that's a win for Kansas City. And it's not necessarily because Baker isn't playing well, because he is, but it's because the weapons just aren't there to help him be as successful as I think they would need to be successful in this game and get a win. So to me, if you can stop the run, if you can keep it to where, I don't care if they get 75 yards on the ground, but I think that you're in a great spot if that's all they can get on the ground, and you keep them under 100 yards, you keep them to that. And I think that that's going to be good for the Chiefs defense and this team. Secondly, and I say this just about every week, but until they do it, I think I'm going to continue to say it. Keep control of the ball. Don't turn the ball over. Win the turnover battle. That seems like it's so simple for football, but the reality is, and I talked about it earlier in the show, Patrick Mahomes keeps throwing picks. I'm not saying that they're his fault, but you can't keep giving the other team chances to win the game, especially when you start talking about making bad choices. Mahomes hasn't been doing that. But when you start throwing the ball and you turn the ball over and you're getting bad luck going against you, which is what's happened the past couple of games for him, if those happen in short fields, you put your defense in a huge bind. And that's a big problem. And I think that if Kansas City can avoid that and make the Bucs have to go 50, 60, 70 yards every single time they try to score, that's a big win for this team as well. Number 3 for me is get DeAndre Hopkins going in this game. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he has to have a 10-win or a 10-catch game or even 10 targets. But what it does mean is get him more acclimated to the offense, get him at least 5, 6, 7 targets in this game, get him the ball in different areas, and use him how he is best being used. Use him in the red zone. use him to get you third down conversions. Just continue to get him more involved in this offense, because while we're talking about this Bucs game, continuing to get him involved is going to be paramount for the Chiefs here in a couple of weeks when they play the Bills, because they absolutely have to have another receiver outside of what they have on the roster right now to step in, and Hopkins can be that guy, but he has to be involved in the offense, and they have to continue to keep pushing him the ball.
Yeah, and Hopkins, I think the longer the season goes on, the bigger impact he's going to make. Yeah, and you bring up the Bills and you take a look at Amari Cooper there. He hasn't been hugely involved yet, and that's going to come with time. But once Hopkins gets going, man, I think that could really be a turning point for this Chiefs offense that has not been as explosive as we've come to expect and as we've come to know from the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes era of Kansas City football. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game for sure on Monday night. The Bucs they're a gritty, football team, and there's a lot of confidence in that locker room, especially among the offensive linemen. They feel they can still move the ball. They feel they can still make plays. They feel they still have playmakers on the offense, even without Mike and Chris. And they're facing probably their toughest test of the year in Arrowhead against this defense. It's going to be a fun one.
Well, they're going to be facing a raucous crowd as well. I'm sure Arrowhead is going to be rocking. And, you talk about DeAndre Hopkins and the Chiefs not being an explosive offense. I don't think he's going to add explosion to this offense, because he's not that player anymore. He doesn't have that kind of speed anymore. He's not going to be taking the top off the defense, but he can get you first downs. He can get you, he just has to get open, get you first downs. You don't need a ton of yak. If he just continues to get catches and continues to give you first downs, Worthy had three targets on third down last week. I think he got one of them converted. You cannot continue to do that on a regular basis and beat good teams. Being able to get Hopkins involved in that, and now you have another guy that can complement Kelce to an extent, and then hopefully you get Juju back. I'm not sure he's back this week, but maybe you get Juju back, and that gives you another guy that can help in that scenario. So I think that's a huge thing for this Chiefs team.
Yeah, it's the reliability. It's the reliability of a veteran, probably a Hall of Famer in DeAndre Hopkins, getting acclimated and then just becoming a bigger and bigger part each and every week.
That's going to be it for us today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Chiefs and Locked On Buccaneers your first listen today. Now for your second listen, go find the new Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL Espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some NFL Real Talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. James, has been a lot of fun. Really looking forward to this game on Monday nights. Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, of course, Locked On Bucs 5 days a week on Twitter at @JYarko_Bucs. And all of my written content is over at the 813.tv.
That's going to be it for us today. Thank you all for listening, and we will catch you tomorrow.